Good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of December 9th, 2021 is called to order, and this is the last meeting for DRB this year. Due to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and the health recommendations from the Los Angeles County Health Department, this Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes. The Design Review Board meeting is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and on AT&T UVerse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, which would be www.glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The appeal application is also available online. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Minas.
Present.
Board Member Simonian.
Present.
Board Member Chagayan is absent this evening, and Chair Welch.
Present.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the December 9th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on December 6th, 2021. Next up would be the approval of the minutes, and these would be the minutes from the special Design Review Board meeting on November the 9th. And at that time, we had board members Minas, Chagayan, and Chair Welch present. So we do have a quorum if Board Member Minas and Chair Welch would like to move the minutes.
Yeah, I moved them to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Board Member Minas, and Chair Welch, I would assume.
I will pass the gavel and second the motion. Yes.
Second the motion. And in terms of a roll call, Board Member Minas?
Yes.
And Chair Welch, or
Yes.
Board Member
Yes.
Welch? Thank you. Motion passes to approve the minutes from November the 9th. Next up would be oral communications. And this would be discussion limited to items not a part of this agenda. I am looking and there are no callers for oral communication, which brings us to any comments from the board members themselves. So none. All right. We have no cases on tonight's agenda under old business. We do have 2 cases under the new business. So at this point in time, I would either like to turn the meeting over to Chair Welch or to Ms. Vista Azadi to present the first case on the agenda.
Yes, let us proceed to the first case, please.
Okay, just one sec. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, good evening and thank you. This is Design Review Case Number PDR 2117731 for the project site located at 1233 South Glendale Avenue. The proposal is to demolish the existing buildings and structures on site and build an approximately 75,000 square foot commercial building for a soundstage production use. The owner's intent is to redevelop the project site to suit the needs of the existing operator, East End Studios, and to unify all of the current operations into one building. The project includes 2 one-story sound stages, attached 3-story and mezzanine ancillary office building with a rooftop deck and a new surface parking lot with 113 parking spaces. The project site is approximately 2.2 acres with frontage on 2 streets, South Glendale Avenue and South Maryland Avenue. The site is split zoned. The easterly half facing South Glendale is located in the C3 Height District 1 zone, and the westerly half is facing South Maryland is zoned R2250 with a parking overlay. East End Studios has been operating at this location since December 2020, and the site has been used as a soundstage production use with offices since 1986. Currently, there are 7 buildings on site along the westerly half that will be demolished, including 2 Craftsman-era buildings. None of the buildings are considered a historic resource. The property currently has 96 parking spaces that serve the operation, with vehicular access taken from 2 driveways along South Glendale Avenue. By way of background, as it relates to development of this project specifically, in September, the planning hearing officer approved multiple variance requests related to the required setbacks, landscaping, required masonry wall buffers, height, and the trash collection area. They also approved a parking reduction permit to allow 113 parking spaces where 119 are required and 2 loading spaces where 5 are required. The surrounding area is a mix of commercial and residential uses, with a fire station located to the north on Palmer Avenue. Directly across South Maryland and to the west, there's a vehicle inventory lot for one of the nearby dealers on the South Grand Boulevard of Cars. The new building is sited on the commercially zoned portion of the site, with the building located at the front property line and pockets of landscape planters at the ground floor along South Glendale that will enhance the pedestrian experience. The updated parking lot is proposed on the western portion of the site in the parking overlay zone and includes a solar panel structure along the northerly portion. Vehicular access to the site will be from a new driveway along South Maryland, and the existing driveways on South Glendale will be closed, which will improve the pedestrian experience as well as traffic flow along the major thoroughfare. A rooftop deck with shade structures is also proposed on the front portion of the building oriented towards South Glendale Avenue. The intent of this area is to provide a usable open space for employees and those conducting business on site. The development also includes landscaped areas throughout, including appropriate buffers along South Maryland Avenue. The new landscaping is appropriately sized and located, and it complements the overall building design. This slide shows the proposed floor plans for the office portion of the project. This space is used primarily for support offices, and it includes general office space as well as makeup dressing rooms, storage areas, and green rooms for filming. Overall, the mass and scale of the design is appropriate. While the new building will be larger and taller than others in the immediate vicinity, South Glendale is quite varied in the size and setbacks of buildings in the blocks around the project site. The new building will add to this variety while also meeting the operational requirements and industry standards for production facilities. At the Maryland frontage, the tall sound stages will be set back significantly from the street, and they also face primarily what are commercial automobile uses and mainly vehicle inventory storage parking. The north and rear facades will be clad with fiber cement panels with a module size that will break up the mask the wall surfaces. And at the south, the existing office building will largely screen the massing of that elevation, and that's shown in the drawing with that dashed line right there. The Glendale Avenue facade will feature a series of small setback areas at the ground floor with built-in landscape planters and benches that help break up the building massing and provide a more human-scaled environment. The canted curtain wall elements help break up the mass, and they also provide visual interest on this frontage. This slide shows the building elevations facing both Glendale Avenue and South Maryland Avenue. Overall, the finished materials are of high quality and they reinforce the building's modern architectural concept. The exterior finished materials consist of smooth finished concrete walls with grid patterned score lines on the South Glendale Avenue frontage, rectangular fiber cement paneling on the rear and north facade to visually break up the massing and in complementary dark and light gray colors. And the rooftop patio structures will be steel with perforated metal panels. The canted curtain walls, vertical louvers, and solid wedge-shaped wall sections on the Glendale facade will create a dynamic composition that will help enhance the appearance of this busy thoroughfare. Staff has not received any public comments for this application. We are recommending approval of the project with no conditions and as proposed. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Asadi, can you explain, and maybe this is a question for the applicant, but what's the mode of egress from the parking into the office building? Or is the office use only going to be used in conjunction with the studio? With the stages?
This use will only be used in conjunction with the studio. The applicant, as well as the owner is here. He is the applicant as well as his project team, and they can clarify that probably better than I could.
Okay. Any other board members have questions for the applicant? For the staff? Okay, let's go ahead and ask the applicant to make their presentation.
Was there another question before?
No, I was just going to comment and say most of my questions are probably better related being addressed by the applicant.
Sure. Well, thank you, everyone. This is Shep Wainwright speaking. I'm a partner with East End Capital and a partner at East End Studio Management, which is our management arm. I first just want to start by saying thank you to everyone for being here tonight, and then also a special thanks to Vista for all the hard work that she's put into this project. We really appreciate it. And then also, it was about a year ago today that we sat down with Jay and Eric and Vista and Kristen and started talking about this project. And I think it's worth mentioning that, we've been developing in various parts of the country for a number of years, and our experience with the city of Glendale has just been phenomenal. I think that just the way that they treated us and the way that they really wanted to understand how our business worked so that we could work together and work to make sure that we weren't outside of any guidelines, but that we, could create a project that worked within the design guidelines of the city. And it was a very collaborative experience and one that still exists today. So I think just want to mention that we're super appreciative of all the hard work that the city has put together to get to this point. And I don't really have much other to say that I didn't say at our zoning administration hearing, which is just thank you. I know that we have a presentation which is very much similar to what Vista just presented, because essentially we're not, I think that we have really put forth a project that we think, even a year later is more exciting even a year later than it was a year ago. This is just an unbelievable location for this. This will be a great studio facility. We think there's a high degree of likelihood that this will get leased at some point in the next year or so to a long-term tenant. And this is exactly what the market is looking for. And Glendale, we're just very excited about Glendale as a location for this type of facility. And I think we've spent a lot of time with our partnership with Relativity Architects on designing what we think is a very, very well-designed project that works both functionally, but also is aesthetically incredible to look at. So I think we've worked well with the city, with our architects in a collaborative environment to create a project that works on all fronts. So we're very excited about that. Thank you for the time. I'll hand it over to Relativity to maybe just share their screen and just walk through maybe in a little bit more detail what Vista has already said, but I think she did a great job so far. So Jenna or Tima, I don't know if you. Either you can...
My name is Tima Bell. Thank you, Shep. I also would like to thank staff and everybody working with Glendale. It has been a really great experience working with Glendale as a municipality, both at the planning department, currently at building safety, and across the board. We're getting really great feedback. It's clear, and as our job as architects, it's really helpful to be able to try and design great buildings when the clarity of direction coming from the city and from staff is really supportive. So thank you as well. The project itself, I think Vista pretty much clarified it. It is a motion picture studio. It does cover both sites, primarily because of the zoning and it being a split lot. We sort of moved the building to the front side along Glendale and the parking to the rear along Maryland. That has proven to be a really great decision because it will keep quite a bit of vehicular traffic from turning from Glendale onto the property and really provide most of it to go around the back, which is wonderful for the property and for the thoroughfare of Glendale itself, which is quite busy. Currently, there's a driveway in, and I know that has caused problems in the past. You can go to the next one. The project itself is, as Vista explained, it's a motion picture studio, which is a big building. And on a site like this, we wanted to have ancillary offices. So we basically stacked the offices and a mezzanine against the stages. And this facade is on Glendale. We really try to pay attention to the pedestrian level. The glazing is actually canted back, allowing for bench seating. In addition, it is gridded and articulated along with the smooth coat plaster and concrete, providing a really nice sort of blend as you walk down for both vehicular traffic as it drives by and cars. It also gives a great sense of visibility as to what's going on inside. It's not a big blocked facade or deep doorways. This is something that sort of presents itself to the city and to the thoroughfare itself. You can go to the next one. As you can see, the project, like any project of a studio scale, parking is very important. Sort of fitting the Tetris puzzle of getting all the parking to work was difficult, but we felt wonderful about what we've accomplished. We've also established solar for the project, which is really something Relativity is very proud of. I know the client is as well, being able to use a renewable source of energy, especially the direction that California is pushing. And these buildings are very difficult to include that. So we were really happy to be able to get as much as we were able to on the project. The majority of the in and out will be taking place from the parking lot. To answer your question, there is both internal circulation as well as an external walkway leading to the front office of the building. But in truth, and I think Shep, if we put him back on, we'll talk to this, the use of the building is entirely insular. There will be no other use other than what is there to support the soundstage itself. No one's moving in as a permanent office on the ground floor that's a different use or has a different focus than support of filming or shooting in that production space.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yep. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it is we're really proud of the project. Relativity, this is, I appreciate Shep's direction. This is probably one of the best projects our office has come up with in a while. We've had other production companies take a look, and they're really excited about this building because it kind of takes a studio to a different level. It's not just a big blank box. It's got some really nice articulation and visibility. And we think we're really proud of it and proud to put it in Glendale. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Does that conclude the applicant's presentation?
Yes.
It does. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Board Member Simoni, you wanted to raise some questions?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions, and we'll just kind of start off with the storefront details. And I'm wondering if the design team or the architect could hone in on the details of the storefront system as it relates to the material board.
Sure. Did you want us to share a screen and look a little closer at it, or did you want to talk about it? Sorry.
If staff is able to allow you to share your screen, I think that would be most helpful.
Sure. Can you see what's up right now?
Yes.
So it is, your normal. We intend to use Arcadia. That's who we've specified. They're a highly qualified storefront glazing system. It is broken up into larger and smaller panels. It is, your typical. I believe it's like a 2-inch by 4-inch system with the glazing internally. And what is important to understand is that both the entryway and the adjacent glazing that is not an entryway, they push back into the building, allowing about a 4-foot cavity at the facade, so that as you're a pedestrian level, you are not sort of overwhelmed by the size of the building. It does allow to sort of engage with the building and we have actually designed a bench to sit in there at staff recommendation.
Yeah, Vista, can you keep on zooming in there because it's hard to see the detail because of the size of the building? Let's see.
You can see we've got a sidewalk. We've got the glazing is canted in to allow for a 32-inch bench. And then there's actually an active corridor on the other side. So as a pedestrian could be walking on the sidewalk, there could be someone walking down the corridor, and it sort of projects the facade of the building back further into the building so it doesn't loom overhead.
And if you don't mind scrolling up to the other picture and then zooming in, maybe either through this or through the material board, I think it's important to note that we're combining materials here to soften it so that you have the glazing, which is the glass, and then the mullions, which will be in black steel or black aluminum. But then we have these vertical wood slats, which break up the material, which go up and down the building to create just a really nice design to break up just the glass. So you have these vertical wooden slats, which you see there, which is the wood finished aluminum louvers, versus the black. And so they're kind of going in opposing directions.
And that was where I was kind of honing in on. So thank you for adding that additional color. Are those, it seems as though, let's say in what's being depicted on the screen at the moment, that the vertical aluminum veneers, let's say that are wood veneer, well, aluminum covered with a wood veneer material, how are they attached? And in other words, how do they adhere to the storefront system? Are they attached to the aluminum structure, which is
yes, they're internal. They're internal attached to the aluminum structure. That's correct.
On the inside.
That's correct.
I see. So they're clipped on in a way to the horizontal and vertical storefront aluminum system from the inside.
That's correct. They add a modicum of privacy. And they warm the facade, so it's not glass, concrete, and black. They give a warmth to the facade.
And then do you envision those kind of being cut and inserted between, let's say, the horizontal pieces, or are they running at length? They
run at length. We do not anticipate that would take forever. Sorry, it would to put in all those individual pieces. No, we see them running at length. The clips obviously will be attached to the mullions, but the aluminum will be an extruded fin, as it were, with a wood finish that will run the length of the window. The glazing, top to bottom.
Thank you for that clarification. The second question I had is looking through the package, I was trying to find an overall site section that takes me from, say, Glendale all the way to Maryland, but I couldn't find such a section. Does it exist in the package someplace?
I'm not sure. I will have to look through. I don't believe so. Do we have Luis, Jenna, did we cut a section from Glendale to Maryland?
I don't believe so, but let me pull up really quick the closest section that we have.
I mean, we obviously have the overall site plan from the from the aerial, which might be able to answer a question if you have one specifically.
And I think that's A101. So yeah, I mean, let's start with that. That's a good point. So,
To
you
the
know,
site
to go
plan?
into the site plan, I have two screens going, so I'm looking at it. So if I'm coming from the parking lot and I'm trying to enter the studios, um, where you have the arrows, are those where the entry doors are, which is the big kind of
The elephant doors, that's
Yeah,
correct.
so we will have 3 elephant doors where you can enter directly into the stages themselves from the parking lot. And then we have on the northern side of the building, we have a walkway, which is an access point, so that in the event that they were actually shooting a production, and you needed to get to your office, that would be your primary method of getting into your office. So you go in there and then you enter the building on a side door there.
From the parking lot. We
From the
also
parking lot.
obviously have a front entrance for
Correct.
ride share or people who are
Right,
coming.
right. So if you,
bicycles.
if you like, for example, if you Ubered or whatever to work, you could get out and you could walk right in. There'll be a reception on Glendale Avenue.
and then and I guess sheet 210 depicts the connection of the offices to the studios. And so there's really no corridor between those two uses. In a sense, those doors open into an internal corridor of the office space. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
The ground floor of the office space is logistic support for the stages. It's restrooms, it's makeup rooms, it's green rooms, it's some prop and what they call gold room storage. The elements on the main floor are intended for support of the actual stages themselves, and not as much about the offices. The offices are more so on the floors above.
So, and this is not a design review board question, but it might be a building and safety question. And I'm bringing it up just because at times applicants go through our process and then end up at building and safety. There's an issue and whatnot. It takes a while to sort out. In regards to your life and safety separations between the studios and the offices, you don't have, so airtight kind of fire rated corridor system connecting the two. Do you anticipate that being a problem?
We actually do. This is actually two different building types. And they're actually separated by a 6-inch seismic gap. The studio itself is built out of port in place concrete, and the offices are built basically steel and wood construction. And there are fire separations, including fire rated doors entering into the stages. They're both sound and fire rated. So we absolutely have the proper separation between the front area of the offices and support and the stages themselves.
Good. And that's why I was looking for the building section, by the way, was
Sure.
to find that exact point. So thank you for that explanation. The other question I had was a landscape buffer system. So when we look at the overall rendering, that's more in the beginning of the package. It's like sheet.
Would it be the front facade?
No, I'm more concentrating on the back for now. The A023 sheet.
There you go.
Yeah, and there's another one as well. But
well, this one's not accurate. Then neither's that. I would go to the actual site plan because that shows where we're actually doing the landscaping.
That's what I'm getting at. And
the
so
rendering doesn't have it.
Yeah, how are we buffering this very tall building from Maryland? And how is landscaping integrated into that scheme?
So we have the whole edge along Maryland is currently landscaped, but we anticipate adding more trees and hedges. Look, the reality of a studio is we prefer not to have a lot of interaction with someone who's not working there. Privacy is of great concern of content creation these days. So it behooves us to add a natural buffer along Maryland to give some sense of privacy to our property as well as to Maryland, so that the busyness of what's going on in the parking lot or the studios themselves, they don't necessarily pour over into each other. So you can see it's a lot of circles. All those circles are to some degree either newly planted or existing trees. So there is a very strong buffer of landscape between the property and. In addition, the building is set back 150 feet from Maryland. So it's not hovering over Maryland. And if you do, I think the hypotenuse of that triangle, the building ends up being something like 30 feet tall from that distance. It feels like 30 feet tall. It doesn't loom over the site.
And to add to that, we are providing 20 new trees that are at least 25-foot tall canopies along
Yep.
Maryland.
That was a question as well. They're
What
tall
size?
specimens. The ones along Maryland are fully grown 25-foot specimens.
That's correct.
And the last question I had for now is, the rendering depicts kind of a block building where the single-family residence is on Maryland, on the southwest corner, but in reality, it is a single-family residence, which is at the bottom of the screen at the moment. And we have a parking lot right next to it. We're assuming this parking lot is going to be operational many hours of the day. And you have a ton of privacy built in along Maryland. But I'm wondering why that privacy buffer doesn't continue along the southern edge of the parking lot to better protect that SFR.
Well, we do have privacy. We are adding landscaping along that southern edge, but we also have a pre-existing very tall CMU block wall that we are not removing from the site. So there is a considerable amount of buffer from that southern edge, and we are landscaping as well with tall hedges.
And if you had to guess, okay, so how tall is that CMU wall?
I think it's currently 8 feet, I believe. It's about 8 feet tall along that southern edge. So it's not, you can't look over it. There is privacy, at least very much so for the residents at the first level, and then again we'll be adding hedging and to grow in front of it, which will eventually grow higher, is my guess, than the 8 feet.
If I can interject, I do note that you're proposing to put a transformer building there with switchgear, and those frequently make a lot of noise. And would that be an imposition on the neighbor in the single-family home being right on?
It is fully enclosed, and while I don't want to say it's as sound mitigated as our soundstage, it is fully enclosed and insulated and vented. So we don't anticipate it being a problem. It's interesting because there's a transformer right now that is not fully enclosed. So we are, in a sense, it's going to be an improvement from what's there right now.
And just so you know, we have spoken with the owner of that property, and they're the only people who submitted in favor of this project and our support for this project when we went through our zoning administration hearing.
To buy them out, it would have been perfect time, right?
We've tried. We know them. It's an opportunity for us that we're considering that along with the property just to the south of that, so that we might be in front of you, hopefully in not too long with that, but that's not in the works at the moment.
That concludes my questions, Mr. Chair, for now.
Okay.
I may have some more as we go through our deliberation, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the questions that I also wanted to ask, I know it's a very common occurrence to use sound stages for filming audience shows, game shows, reality shows, whatnot, sitcoms. Is that a potential use of this site, of these stages?
No.
No, these are not going to be rated for
Okay.
that.
We're not having live audience at this stage.
Okay. And the glass facade as it approaches, Glendale, the renderings really show it well lit up. Will it be lit up at night? I mean, the soundstage is pretty much a daytime operation, not so much nighttime. But will the lighting be there Well, maybe I'm wrong about that, but
Well, we will have, we can't dictate when a potential tenant will be operating, but we will have exterior lighting on the building, which will light the
Okay.
sidewalk, 24 hours a day. But as far as what happens behind the scenes, it really just depends on what production they're filming at that particular time. So sometimes they'll work long hours, sometimes they'll be out at 5 o'clock. But in general, in this industry, there will always be someone there working.
And we do have Title 24 concerns. We're not allowed to necessarily keep a building lit all night long. We have limitations about what the allowance is. I would hazard a guess that along with the lighting on the facade of the building, that the lobby would be consistently lit. Perhaps not the offices on the second and third floor.
Okay. Yeah, I asked because it's a very narrow sidewalk, and the tree cover that's there is pretty pervasive. So it could have a tendency to be quite dark. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Simoni.
I think Mr. Mina's had his hand up first.
Oh, okay. I can't see him on my screen.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the staff report. Going back to the facade of the building and having so much glass inclined manner, you're compromising. Again, I'm not an architect, but I'm an engineer. That's compromising a lot of shear walls along the front. Again, it might be a building and safety issue, but do you think this tall of a glass kind of inclined manner, be safe during the strong ground motion earthquake? I mean, again, I'm sure it was addressed by the structural engineer, but having so much glass, you're compromising, the highly needed shear walls for this part of the country. And,
so our shear. Sorry to interrupt. Do you want me to? I'd be glad to answer the question. The concrete angled wall, or the concrete walls on the facade, are poured in place concrete walls, and the shear walls for this project are actually running in the other direction. So at every indication where we have a concrete wall, we've got a shear wall running perpendicular and tying to the far side of the project, to the I guess it's the north side wall of the offices. So we've structured our building in the opposite direction, that the shear is actually captured on the short way rather than the long. And we did spend an enormous amount of time with our structural engineer making sure that this building was solid and obviously wouldn't rack or have problems over time. During an earthquake, I mean, no one can predict exactly how a building is going to react entirely, depending on the strength of the earthquake. But this does follow the 2021 code guidelines for structural requirements.
Thank you. That was my comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Simoni.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could get a bit more details on the south elevation facade, and looking at sheet A311. There's a nice diagram that depicts a pre-finished Logix concrete wall system. And the architect did mention that the sound stages were going to be poured in place concrete. And I'm wondering, is this poured in place concrete? Is that what we're talking about?
Now you're asking questions that I'm going to love to answer. The building is constructed of a material called an ICF block, an insulated concrete form. It's a different way of using poured in place. Instead of hiring carpenters to build formwork that gets used and thrown away, what you do is there's a company that produces styrofoam blocks. They get stacked as Legos. They're pre-built to hold rebar. So the rebar lays in both horizontally and vertically. You pour it in 8-foot lifts, and the styrofoam that has been recycled, it's recycled styrofoam, adds a level of temperature and sound mitigation for the building naturally. In addition to that, the styrofoam is designed to have a plastic reinforcement at every 16 inches on center, equal to a 2x4 stud. So we're able to put sleepers on the exterior wall and then mount our finished cementitious panel on the outside. And on the inside, there's not a lot of finish that's required. So we basically are able to screw our insul quilt, which is the sound mitigation insulation, directly to the styrofoam on the inside. So it makes a wonderful section of a building, going from rain screen, cementitious panel, sleeper, 2 inches of styrofoam, 12 inches of concrete, 2 inches of styrofoam, and then the insulated blanket. So we don't waste plywood. Everything's it comes from a recycled source, and we're really proud of that building method.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. Any other questions? Final thoughts? No. Okay. Are there any callers on the matter? Yes, we have callers. Okay. We'll go ahead and take callers now.
Yes, we have one caller this evening. Mr. Aradon Vachagan, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yes, hi, and thank you for connecting. And I have some questions and some concerns. And can I ask you how many square foot building is currently exist that are operating as studios right now?
I believe it's roughly 45,000 square feet.
At this time exist.
Correct.
Okay, how many square feet is the lot?
It's 2.2 acres. So what is that, 96,000 feet, something?
Oh, okay. I'm a neighbor there, and currently we are facing the issue when they do shooting videos, or shooting some movies, and they have some actors, and then also they having some castings, and when they come to their job or whatever you call it, and there is a big traffic and mess is going on because of all these people are waiting outside. There is a big line, and they park their car in a curbside, or they park in our customer places next door on the front of there is a plaza. They park there. There's always this issue, and sometimes sometimes they try to jaywalk. There is some issue happened and accidents, and we all know what they have some movie going on, some shooting going on. There is a chaos in this area, and we always facing this issue. I'm wondering if you double up instead of 45,000, it's gonna have a 75,000 square foot. How this issue gonna be resolved? It's gonna be, I believe, much more bigger issue.
Well, if you're
sir, you can hold your thoughts on that. You'll address those when we get to a rebuttal. So we're trying to listen to what the public has to say and the concerns that they have, and we'll give you a chance to respond in more detail.
Okay, and should I continue? I have another question, also very more important.
Okay, go ahead. Finish that thought up, and then I think your time will be out. So go ahead.
There is another big issue, and what is my concern? Some suspicious activities happening. There was a very big tree in front of this property, and suddenly this tree died, and there was 6 of them there, and one cut at the plaza illegally, I believe, and the other one I'm just on the front of the unit, and it died, and then I believe city cut and and now it's not exist. This tree is like maybe 80 years old tree. I really want to know who cut the tree. If somebody checked the tree, there is some activities happened, and I would like to know if somebody test the tree, because I believe this tree was especially. I apologize. If there is any interpreter who can interpret, because of my English knowledge, I never have academic education of the English. It's really hard for me to express my thoughts, and I'm trying to just pick the words to make the sentences is going. But most important thing, the meaning. Apologize if any word would be unprepared. If you have a translator, I would like to talk more. But this is the most important thing. And who cut the tree? If there was any investigation, if this tree was chemically, artificially was somehow killed, and what happened with the tree? Why this happening? How they connected the cutting of the tree, killing the tree with this project, and also how you're gonna tolerate the parking issue. Apologize again for my heavy English, but hopefully you can understand the thoughts. And I would like to.
Yep, we hear. We'll see if we can get an answer to that question. So if you can continue to stay tuned,
thank you.
We'll see if we can't get something. Thank you very much. Are there any other callers on the matter? Okay, so yes, if the applicant could provide any answers to the questions posed, and/or staff, if you know anything about this tree issue.
I can speak on the first topic that was raised relative to activity on Glendale Avenue. It's the first that I'm hearing. We've only owned the project for a year, but in our ownership, we've gotten no complaints whatsoever. I visit the property 2 to 3 times a week and have never seen lines of people out front, but that doesn't mean that it never happened. But I think that will absolutely be mitigated by the fact that we're inverting the access to this facility, and we're cutting off access to the facility off of South Glendale Avenue. So it's actually beneficial to everybody, because in general with studio facilities, we prefer to keep them discreet. And so that's what we're doing. And that's why we're moving primary vehicular access to Maryland Avenue. So I think that will absolutely solve the caller's issue on that particular issue. As it relates to the tree, I can't speak to that other than to say that I can confirm that nobody at East End had anything to do with killing any trees. We're actually trying to save the trees at this project, and are obviously invested in bringing, significantly more trees and landscaping to this project than currently exists. So,
Chef, just to follow up on that, you're absolutely right. The current driveways and access along Glendale is probably what the caller is having difficulty with. And you're absolutely correct in that we've directed the majority of the traffic around to the backside to Maryland. It serves the purpose of the studio better, and it addresses vehicular traffic along Glendale and pedestrian traffic to some degree, because we want to help control that. So not sure how many times that might have happened before your ownership, but it is something that the new design will handle. I do also want to clarify the caller's concern about the square footage. The building is 70,000 square feet, but the footprint is not, because there's 3 stories of offices. So the footprint is actually much closer to the existing 45. I believe the footprint is probably somewhere around 60,000. So we are not doubling the size of the footprint of the existing buildings. And then last but not least, on the tree, I believe when we had our survey, the tree was indicated as not being healthy. I was unaware that it had died and was cut down, but we do have we are working with the forestry department to replace one tree on Glendale, and I believe that is the one that we will be replacing, in addition to the 20 we will be adding along Maryland.
Speaking of vehicular access.
I'm sorry?
Who was that?
The caller.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir. We have to move on with the hearing, so We appreciate your call. But I do have a question about the vehicular access. The bringing it around to the Maryland side, but Maryland is still a fairly narrow street, and it was really designed as a residential street. But often you have to bring fairly large vehicles onto a studio site as needed. Have you evaluated the accessibility for large trucks to get through Maryland?
Yes, we have. And we've done truck studies with our vehicular consultant and are working with the city on our driveway access. Yeah.
Okay, because I live not very far from this site, so I can attest to what the caller had talked about in terms of jams that come from people trying to get in and out of that lot there, from Glendale Avenue, of course.
You know, design-wise, we did struggle back and forth at the early stages, but about where to put in vehicular access. But vehicular access at the consistency that might be necessary for the site off of Glendale would have caused significant traffic issues. Sometimes with trucks or vehicles, it just would have caused a lot of problems. So we made the decision, and I believe, as Chef said, we worked with Gibson. Is that the right company? We had a traffic consultant.
Yeah.
That reviewed our trip rates, the sizes of the vehicles coming in, and we're working with the city on our driveway access.
Okay, very good. Board Member Simonian, you have another question?
Here. I wanted to get some more clarity on, similar to my last question in regards to the material of the facade. The Glendale facade, where we have the storefronts occurring, so if we're looking at sheet A310, the west elevation clearly depicts the perforated cladding, fiber cement cladding, I should say. The north material, you mentioned concrete material. Is that similar to what you're proposing on the south side in regards to that system?
Yes, yes, it is a pre-finished system. Correct.
Ends to the building, and so you have a very articulated building. You have this ton of variety built in regards to the storefronts and the entryways and the canted storefronts and the angled concrete, etc. And then you have this ends with the exit stairs coming up. I wonder, why did you not choose to kind of emphasize the corners, the ends, to kind of create more of a kind of end piece to it?
The truth of the matter is that both the ends, for argument's sake, I'll call them the east and west, because they're up against adjacent structures. On what we'll say the south end, which is up against I believe a two-story building, and there's just not a lot of room to get true articulation and even attach panels in there. So we had to come up with a system that would essentially be pre-finished as it was put together. And then on the north end, we also have a building directly in that location. And that side of the building on the north side around to the back of the building facing the parking lot does have the fiber reinforced panels. It is only, I'll call it the south side up against the two-story building that is essentially a little bit more of a blank facade, only because it's very hard to build something directly in line with a building directly across from it.
Yeah, and I'm not as much referring to the north and south elevations. I'm more referring to the Glendale facade. And so when you're looking at the Glendale facade in itself,
yep,
you have these end pieces that come up, right? And there's an awkward kind of a terminus to that facade on the rooftop deck. And I'm wondering,
can we pull up? I'm sorry, I want to make sure we're looking at the right thing. Do you mind pulling up the rendering again, Luis or Jenna? Oh, those are the towers, the towers. Is that right? Is that what you're indicating?
There's an opportunity to create end pieces, to frame it, to have maybe a different finish. But I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I mean, I feel like I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to concrete, and hanging or attaching things or shifting the material. I feel would in this case kind of take away from the massing of the building, and the sort of the gentle articulation of the angles. Those end pieces are staircase towers, obviously, as we've understood, and an elevator. So they are functional to some degree. I think highlighting them might not kind of blend with the consistency we have on the rest of the structure. The panels, the concrete panels on the facade are sand finished plaster over the top. So we are putting a finish over that concrete to get something of a, I mean, maybe a Tadalando kind of soft feel to the concrete, which is not always achievable, but I believe because of our angles and the type of mixture we're going to provide, we're going to get that. So I think kind of dressing up those two little corner elements would sort of detract from the clean uniformity of the concrete we've provided. That's the architectural intent. That's the.
Well, I think just primarily if anything, we're trying to just keep it somewhat uniform and not necessarily draw the eye to those areas, as opposed to all of what we think the more creative aspects of the front of the building really revolves around the glass storefronts and the play between the glass storefronts and those vertical louvers.
Thanks for the feedback.
Good question.
Okay, have there been any other callers? Okay, so no other callers, no more questions from board members. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and close the public hearing and proceed to board deliberations. Board member Minas, would you like to lead us off with your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Overall, I like the building. I like the appearance from Glendale Avenue. I like the fact that the traffic is diverted from the busier Glendale Avenue to Maryland Avenue. Overall, I think it's a good improvement to the city of Glendale. The building is not necessarily out of proportion for the general area, although the immediate structures are smaller. I move to approve the plans the way they're designed, and just confirm the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Board member Simonian.
Thank the design team for putting so much effort and time into this package. It is a very creative design, and it's a complicated building. There's a lot going on, and it is big, and it is in the urban center. And so I thought your package was, although it was long, it was quite massive, but at the same time, it really provided a ton of color and a lot of details, which we very much appreciate. And also, some of the nuances that were filled in by the architect and the development team helped me understand the building that much better. These sound stages are big. These sound stages are bulky. These sound stages are just hard to have, let's say, on Glendale Boulevard in this kind of a context. And so I think this is a very creative approach by the design team to integrate the offices on Glendale to create that kind of connectivity via the interesting facade, to really integrate those design features, those vertical fins, the storefront system, the canting of the storefront, etc. I think all that adds to the design language, which is quite subtle and quite nice. I think it will work out very nicely. And then, of course, the site planning, I think, was successful, where the bulky items were pushed to the west side. And the way the parking was laid out on surface, I think will help with that transition. I was happy to see that there is going to be a lot of vegetation along Maryland, especially with the tall species. I was a bit disappointed that that wasn't continued on the south side. In fact, I think that should be. I think the landscape plan should be revised to really create that buffer. But I'd be glad to entertain a condition where if the development team is successful in sourcing and acquiring the properties to the south, then of course, maybe that goes away, that condition goes away. But I think if the single family residence does stay there, we absolutely need to do everything in our power to buffer it and make sure that it's protected. This board goes through a lot of effort on single family residences for a 2-story home. You would not imagine the amount of effort we put in residential properties when they're affecting one another, let alone something like this, right? So we just need to be cognizant of what we're proposing and be respectful to the neighbors. So I think that is a thought I had. The design language I thought was very nice. It was appealing. I think it's simple at the same time chic and elegant. So the site plan works, the design language works, the detailing works, orientation works, everything works. I'm still not completely sold on the end pieces of Glendale Boulevard. I think the storefront system is superb. The angled pieces are great. It just is missing kind of how those end pieces are treated. I'd like to see staff kind of explore that a bit more with the applicant, but no need to go into a ton of detail about it. But I believe that there should be some sort of thought process. The way these kind of 2 pieces stick up, the stair towers, they kind of remind me of kind of a castle-like thing, which is what we're trying to avoid. And so a lot of emphasis has been placed on that blank facade on Glendale, which is really nice. The way the storefronts go up, and then you have just these 2 pieces that stick up. I think staff could, or the applicant, the architect is talented. I'm sure they'll come up with something with staff. So in my case, I absolutely support the project. I would add those 2 conditions. But in general, I think it's going to be a good design for our city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. For my part, I personally also am in support of the project. One of the, well, actually the very first project I worked on as a recent graduate from college was Raleigh Studios, building stages 11 and 12 and 14, if you guys remember those. It was, you know, I was obviously a very junior member of the team, but I understand the scale of these projects, you know, and the challenges. I think that we did a good job at Raleigh, and I think that you've done an equally good job here. As Board Member Simonian said, these are big boxes, you know, and there's no hiding that, you know. So the fact that you sort of wedged it in the middle between, you know, a nicely articulated facade on the Glendale front, and then stepped it way back from Maryland to what is still, I mean, ostensibly a residential street, even though it's very, very not a standard residential street. So I think you've done a successful job with that in terms of the space planning and the additional landscaping. I concur with Board Member Simonian about that screening on the south. I think it would be neighborly of you to add a little bit more of a landscape buffer there if possible. I think that the additional buffer that you've added against Maryland is appropriate, but I think a little bit more on that south, just because of what it is abutting against, which is a residential home. Beyond that, I think that the particular work on the facade is very nice. I, as a frequent traveler on Glendale Avenue there, and even walking through the neighborhood, I think that it will be a much improvement. Changing the vehicular access to Maryland is a huge change. I think that you did the correct thing here in recognizing that vehicular access off Glendale is very bad, very troublesome for the local businesses and the local people around there. So I approve of that as well. Regarding the stair towers, I guess I was not as bothered by them. I see what you're saying, Mr. Simonian, about sort of that crenellation look with them, but I don't think that they're going to be particularly visible for anyone down on the streets or people driving by. But yeah, I think that I'd be in support of asking for the applicant to work with staff on, maybe something that steps them back a little bit, or something that takes away a little bit from the facade, which is otherwise, I think, well executed. So those would be my comments. I'll leave it up to the other board members if you want to proceed, or if Jay, or if you wanted to ask for any clarification on any of the thoughts here.
Well, the buffer at the south is pretty obvious, so we're good there. When we were working with the design team, we had talked a fair amount about the stair towers at the north and south. Were convinced through the discussion that the stair towers needed to be flush with the facade. Now, if there was a way to step them back, that would be probably the best way to handle this. But I agree with the architect that introducing a new material, or I was, as you guys were talking, I was thinking, what if we had a different scoring pattern there? And any of those things would just draw so much attention to something that really just kind of should recede. Like you mentioned, I agree that it's probably not going to be super visible. So in terms of a condition, I don't really know what we would say there. We could say explore design, or it could be more, I think it would be better as a consideration, staff to work with design team to identify possible alternatives for the treatment. And if we can't come up with anything good, at least know that the board is comfortable with what's proposed.
That would seem to work for me. I don't know about the other board members.
And Mr. Simonian?
Yeah, Mr. Simonian, you're still muted, I think.
Apologize. I concur with the architect in that I absolutely would not suggest a different material there. I think that would be the wrong move. Looking on the rendering, let's say on sheet A025, on the south side, on the south end of the Glendale facade, there is a large door on the ground level. And then there is this continuation of a vertical shaft that ultimately ends at the stair tower. To me, that begs to kind of be pulled back a bit. And same concrete, but it could have a different type of finish, let's say, scoring wise. It could differentiate itself subtly, but not so. To me, what doesn't bother me as much about that, but just the end piece, the top piece, where you kind of have the facade going up straight, and then it just turns into the stair tower, and there's just no articulation there of anything. And so that's where my thought is. I think it is such a large project. There's so much going on. This was just something that really popped out for me. And I think it would help. Do I think, is it a condition or a consideration? I'm leaning towards a condition, but if staff has explored this extensively and this was the best option presented, then I'm willing to kind of go along with that. But personally, I do think that there's ways to soften that up, and there's things that could be done. We've always kind of emphasized the corners of a building. We've always emphasized the portion that pops up behind the roof. And this is a big statement. So I think it isn't too much to ask for the applicant to come up with a few ideas. And if staff thinks there are improvements, then we, they go along with one of them. And if they just, after that exercise, which will be a quick one, they realize that this is the best approach, then that's what happens.
Could you just, I won't put it as part of the consideration, but just for when we work with the design team, the page reference you made, thinking about the door and one of your ideas for how to.
Yeah, it's architectural sheet A025.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so that we'll have a clear condition to work with the team to see if there are other solutions that move in the direction that you've suggested, and see what happens.
With that, I move to approve the project with two. Yes.
Sorry, could I just get some clarification for that the south side? Is the intent to increase the size of the planter area or to just add additional taller landscaping there? Because when we were working on this, and the architect can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've kind of maxed out the landscape area there to still accommodate their parking space dimensions.
I think, just if you're looking at sheet,
I also wanted to mention, and I apologize to the interruption, there is a GWB easement along that edge as well. That limits the amount of what we can do at that location.
Well, if we're looking at sheet A101, you have landscaping depicted along Maryland. The natural inclination would have been at site planning to just continue that, right? You just turn whatever's happening on Maryland and take it down the south side. That would be, I think, the response of what would be the appropriate buffer between something like this and a single family home.
Could we leave this condition a little more open-ended to address both the easement, parking lot dimensions, with the goal of easing the transition between the single-family residence and the property, ideally through landscape buffering, but if that proves impossible, the current condition, I don't believe, is a 8-foot tall block wall. It's a lower block wall with kind of a topper fence running along it. Perhaps that could be improved aesthetically to create just a nicer appearance to the neighbor, and maybe coming up to 10 feet. We could see if they're in contact with the neighbor, we could see what would work for them. Just to give the flexibility, since I don't know if we know what this easement would mean for tall landscaping, Vista.
I think there's options to add taller landscaping. There are kind of two issues with increasing the size of the planter. As far as where the transformer can go, I believe that's really the only location GWP will approve. So that's kind of, it has to stay there. And then increasing it towards the corner where it's near Maryland would also impact the parking stalls. And then can I just share my screen real quick to show one of the landscape sheets, if that's okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you see my screen? So this area right here, I think, is what we're talking about, correct? Okay, so they are proposing, I believe.
Can you zoom in a little bit, please?
Yeah. Oops. Sorry, I don't normally use this computer, so just bear with me. So this is the area in question, I believe, and I think this is it looks like a single family, but I think it's like a 2 or 3 unit building. And from what I remember, I believe there's a unit up here, and then below is a garage. And then this area here, there are existing trees that will remain. I believe the wall here will be, I was under the impression it'll be about 6 feet tall and it'll be a solid CMU wall in this area. And then I believe these are going to be rosemary bushes. I think we can get taller landscaping in there. I am concerned about increasing the size of the planter and the impact that could have on both the transformer, the easement, as well, and the parking.
Well, I mean, thank you for that additional detail. Well, for starters, rosemary is not the right appropriate material there for screening, right? I would not suggest a ficus or anything like that because it's intrusive. However, like a lugostrium or something, you could certainly get 14 feet out of a, lugostrium bush, and that's not going to take a lot of room. So if there are 2 feet on center lugostriums that are spaced adequately, that would get some height, or some other sort of a hedge-like specimen that the landscape team comes up with. But those are things that I think, as Mr. Platt brought up, to work with the design studio team to see what's a logical solution without going through a ton of heartache here.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood too. So thank you very much.
So I move to, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, if that's all right.
Yep.
I move to approve the condition. I'm sorry, I move to approve the project with 2 conditions. Condition number 1, staff to work with the architectural and landscape team to create an appropriate buffer via suitable landscaping to provide a buffer between the parking lot and the existing single-family residence, which could also integrate an appropriate CMU, fence, etc. The second condition would be to for the design team to provide several quick sketches regarding the corner elements of the Glendale facade, and to collaborate with staff to see if there's a better solution.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. We have a motion made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Board Member Minas,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
and Chair Welch.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 3-0. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for
luck,
your time.
guys.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well done.
Chair Welch,
Yes.
we have had a number of emails come in for the next case on today's agenda that came in
Okay.
either at the very last minute before the hearing or came in after the start of the hearing. If the board wishes to review the letters and comments or the emails that came in prior to the hearing, perhaps you'd like to take a short recess so we can forward those to you, so provide ample time to review them. It's up to the board whether or not you choose to review the letters that came in after the start of the hearing.
How many additional letters are we talking about?
Approximately 5 to 10.
Ooh, geez. Okay.
I believe
Okay.
two or three that came in prior to the start of the meeting, which
Okay.
the board should address. The other ones are up to the board's discretion.
Okay, yes, let's take maybe a 10-minute recess here. If you can get those forwarded out to us, I'll take as good a look as I can. And hopefully the submitters will also make calls for the public hearing. So, okay, so we'll be back here at 6:30.
Thank
Okay.
you for the break. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, we are back from recess, and it is now time to turn to the second case for the night. So, Mr. Bektikian, would you like to lead us off?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Design Review Board members. This next case on the agenda is Design Review Case Number PTR 2017024, and the project address is 2667 Bogue Drive. Excuse me. The proposal is to demolish an existing fire damaged house that was built in 1958 and replace it with a two-story 3,190 square foot house with an attached two-car garage. I'd like to mention that when we sent out the public notices, the postcards that were mailed out added 10 to the floor area of the house. So that was a typo. So the house is not 31,000 some square feet, but it's 3,000 some square feet. I just wanted to clarify that. Having said this, I'd like to turn to the PowerPoint slides. Let me get that going. Okay. Before I go onto the slides, let me mention that okay. Let me mention that we received a number of public comments. We received approximately 19 comments in opposition from Adrian Biondo, Jason Garcia, Pablo Selener. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing some names. Christine Saponara, Philip Daggart, Ellen Little, Jiho Yu, Linda Conover, Milling Pope, Rick Obradors, Shanna Bonston, Stavros Savas, Steve Villarino, Nadia Zora-Papel, Webster Fitzgerald, Ron Villarino, Miriam Streisek, Charles Fisher, Carla Cohen, and I believe there were two additional ones that were forwarded to you. The applicant has also submitted a petition in support of the project. There were 12 names on the petition. However, one of the names on the support petition subsequently has sent comments in opposition, which were forwarded to the board. Proceeding with the PowerPoint. This is a location map showing the property. The property is about 11,900 square foot lot. It slopes upward from the street. It was developed back in 1958, and there's a building pad that will be used to site the new house. So the house will be sited approximately in the same location as the existing house that will be demoed, and the existing driveway location will be maintained. This is an aerial view from Google showing the property. So the subject property is here marked with the Google balloon. It's surrounded by similar residential, single-family residential properties. And to the east, further to the east where my pointer is, there's an Edison easement running approximately northwest, southeast direction. This is a street view from Google from 2018. As you can see, the property slopes upward. There's a pretty slope at the beginning towards the street, then it flattens out. That's where the house is located, and the house will be located. The driveway is further to the right. There's a retaining wall supporting the property to the east of it. There are existing oak trees, indigenous trees in the back, and I'll point it out on the site plan in a moment, and those will be retained, and the remaining trees on the property will be retained. Looking at the perspective of the proposal, this is a rendering. We'll go more in detail in a little bit. So the driveway location will be the same, leading to a two-car garage attached to the house. The property will be developed around it. The landscaping on the slope will be updated. There are some elevations shown at the bottom. We'll get to those in a moment on a larger scale drawing. Here's the site plan. The property starts sloping up, then it levels out. There's another slope to the back here, leading to the neighboring property to the north. The oak trees are located on the property to the north. There are 3 of them. The applicant has submitted an arborist report. The arborist report supports the project in terms of preservation of oak trees. The forestry division has also reviewed that report and concurs with the determination. Moving on, this is a more detailed site plan showing also the footprint of the building, the footprint of the first story, and the footprint of the second story. Coming to the elevations, below is the front elevation of the house facing Bogue Drive. As you know, Bogue Drive curves around. So this is the long front elevation leading to the garage, 2 levels. There's going to be an outdoor balcony or porch. The roof of the front will be used as the balcony or deck of the second level. There are other deck levels that I'll point out, one of which is the rooftop. This is the rear elevation. Rooftop deck is shown with a glass parapet here. The other elevations, the other 2 elevations, below is the elevation facing Bogue Drive towards the west. And the upper elevation is the elevation facing the property to the east. The first floor plan is here. Attached garage, habitable levels with a bedroom in the back towards the north side. The second floor, this is the deck or the balcony that will be facing the front of the building. And there's another balcony or deck on the rear portion of the building above the garage, behind the bedroom that's located over the garage. In the back of the building, there's going to be a staircase leading to a landing that will be accessible from the deck behind the bedroom over the garage. That staircase will continue further up to a deck at the roof level, which is visible on the roof plan, which is coming next. So this is the roof plan as indicated on plan. The entire roof would be surrounded by a glass parapet. but it's indicated that a portion, the westerly portion of the roof, will be designed as a deck. However, the entire deck or roof level is a single roof level. And as you can see here, there are some trellises proposed on the sides of the building to relieve some of the mass. Cross sections, we can see a lot of stacked walls here. What we can see here, this is the deck over the ground level, which is accessible from the second story bedroom. And this deck will be projecting towards the street. There's another view of it here. These are views at across the property and through the neighboring properties to indicate relationships. And I'm going to concentrate on the staff's comments regarding the project, using these perspectives because they illustrate better the points that we raised in the staff report. I'm going to try and keep my comments brief and concentrated around certain themes that staff has noticed and we commented on in the staff report. The site planning is pretty much the same as what's existing there in terms of using the pad, the driveway location. A couple of comments regarding site planning. What's indicated on the site plan is not a resolved situation with respect to the driveway approach here. The Public Works Engineering Division is requiring that the existing sidewalk in terms of in front of the property continue around the driveway approach. Given that the property has a slope, it's not clear how that sidewalk around the driveway approach will affect the retaining walls around it and the driveway slope. And there's also a utility pole in that area, which is to the right of the driveway here. As we can see from, let me go back up here. This is a view of the existing situation here. As you can see, there's a retaining wall to the right of the driveway. There's also a utility pole that's not visible in this view at this location here, somewhere around here. It's not clear how the design of the sidewalk around the driveway approach will affect these retaining walls, utility pole location, and the slope of the driveway. The requirement of the sidewalk is beyond the authority of the Design Review Board. However, what results from the sidewalk design is well within the jurisdiction of the Design Review Board. So this is a comment that we had and conditioned in the staff report. Another concept or another comment regarding the site planning is what is shown in the grading plan that's attached to the plans. The grading plan indicates that the back portion of the property will be graded into the hillside and the slope will be cut. But if we can look at the site plan, there's no indication of that cut. So there's a conflict or ambiguity between the two plans. So the site plan here shows there's an existing retaining wall here, a low retaining wall, and the site plan indicates that it will remain this location. Moving on to the building mass and scale. Looking at the building mass, there are a number of areas where the building mass appears to be bulky and boxy. For instance, there are large two-story dark volumes proposed, one here and another one in the front of the, there's one on the side here and there's another one. So these two building volumes, actually it's one here and one in the back portion of the building. These building volumes, together with the single flat level roof, contribute to the building mass, in addition to the volumes, as you can see here, over the garage and this area. The dark masses, for instance, incorporate bathrooms or a pantry. Those areas probably staff is thinking that the roof level can be lowered there and create a relief in the building mass. In addition to this, I keep losing my pointer. Here we go. This is the entry of the building. It's designed as a double volume with this on top. This double volume also can be reduced in height a little bit to create a relief in the building mass. Other areas where the building mass can be modified are, for instance, the trellis that runs straight and incorporates the projecting deck. As you can see here, this is a continuous frontage. These trellises can possibly be pushed back a little bit on both sides of this balcony to create some relief of this long, flush frontage. So staff thinks there are areas where the building mass can be improved and create relief consistent with the guidelines, design guidelines. So changing the building mass would also result in changes in or breakup in the roof level. Instead of a single roof level over the entire building, the roof level can be stepped up or down to create further relief. Having said this, let me go back to the roof plan here. So the roof plan, for instance, indicates a glass parapet around the entire building. Look at the elevations or the cross section. If you look at the cross section here, the roof parapet is indicated. Getting this pop-down menu. The roof parapet does not extend all the way across the entire roof. So it's not clear exactly where the roof, accessible roof deck will end and which portions of the roof deck are not accessible. So this is part of what the applicant has provided in terms of view or privacy review and the views available from the roof deck. The entire roof deck is not available for use. Privacy issues can change. So it's not readily identifiable as to what privacy issues the roof deck will result in. Continuing with the staff report and coming to the design and detailing of the building. The building masses are accentuated by the dark, almost black um, finish of these vertical elements and the starking or contrasting white masses of the two-story building volumes, the plastered volumes. Staff's direction is to soften these instead of being very conspicuous in terms of design, to be more consistent with our design guidelines that recommend blending with the hillside. So these harsh color contrasts can be softened by lightening up the dark or the black stone veneers and using a more earth tone instead of the white stucco. And we have a comment also regarding the windows. As you can see, there are windows here that are picture windows on this facade and this facade. But when you look at the front facade of the building here, especially the second story with these narrow windows, the language changes. The fenestration pattern changes. If I can go back to the elevation drawings. As you can see here, the lower facade has large picture windows. But when you turn around the corner, the window fenestration pattern changes quite a bit, and they don't relate to the front. Same here. If I'm pointing out to the second story bedroom windows, and this is the double, this is the bedroom over the garage, and these are windows over the bedroom, or of the bedroom. And this language, the fenestration pattern, doesn't relate to the large picture windows. So perhaps some of these windows can be changed by introducing some windows similar to the front windows, albeit not entirely transparent because they're bedroom windows, but with some frosted glass panels and some clear panels. Having said this, I'd like to get to the staff recommendation, which is for return for redesign with a number of conditions. And the conditions relate to what I've been mentioning all along. The conditions relate primarily to the building massing, to soften the building mass more consistent with the design guidelines, and along with the building mass to soften the color palette and the material palette. So the first condition is to modify building mass to reduce the boxy character. And this will involve stepping back the second story, modifying the tall black masses, and so on, and modifying the straight trellis by breaking it up a little bit. The second condition is to step the building with the topography by pulling back the projecting deck over the first story. So the balcony or the deck over the first story that's accessible from the second story bedroom projects beyond or more towards the street than the ground level, ground floor. And staff's recommendation is that this deck be pulled back. Condition 3 is to restudy the facade and redistribute the cladding materials. And this is intended to soften up the building mass with the finished materials. Condition 4 is to use a more muted color palette. And again, the direction here is to soften the building, the massing. Condition 5 is to restudy the roof line. And this is what I mentioned earlier in terms of breaking up the roof level into probably a couple of 2 or 3 levels to break up the building mass. Condition 6 is to restudy the fenestration so that we can have a more uniform fenestration pattern. The condition 7 is to reduce the story volume at the entry. This is the double volume over the entry, which can be lowered and which will introduce additional breakup in the building mass. Condition 8 is to eliminate the roof deck and access stair, or as an alternative, reduce the size of the roof deck. And the direction here is pulling back the parapet from the edge of the roof inward so that it creates a step in the roof, as opposed to the parapet being visible as a mass at the very edge of the roof. So the idea here also is to use a little stem wall, for instance, probably plastered stem wall, and to put the glass railing over it. So that stem wall would be stepped back from the edge of the roof, which can be used as a gutter. Condition 9 is to review the design of the area at and around the driveway for the required sidewalk. And this will affect the driveway slope and retaining walls in the area and the entire front, the entry steps leading to the front door. Condition 10 is to review the accuracy of the cross sections through the site. And these were on sheet A13 of the plans. And this shows the relationship of the subject building in relation to the neighboring property, so that the massing can be related to the neighboring building mass and privacy issues can be addressed also. Condition 11 is to review the consistency between the cut and fill plan and the other plans. As I indicated, the cut and fill plan indicates a cut on the north side of the property, while the other plans don't indicate a cut, and a clarification is necessary. And condition 12 is to correct the plans to reflect the upward ground slope on the north side of the property. It's visible in the cross sections that across the property line on the north side of the property, the ground level is flat, but there is a slope there. There's a little mound that separates the subject property from the neighboring property to the north. And that's where the oak trees are located. They're located on a slope. Condition 13 is to provide specifications regarding the walls along the sidewalk. There's an existing wall along the sidewalk. Some plans indicate that as a retaining wall. Other plans indicate it differently. But this wall, it seems it's a slough wall, not a retaining wall. Condition 14 is to provide specifications regarding the planter walls between the walkway and the driveway. And this is in that area that's subject to a redesign because of the required sidewalk. 15 is to specify permeable paving materials. This is a standard condition that we add. And condition 16 is to specify the location of mechanical equipment and trash storage on the property. And this is a pretty mundane thing that we ask for if it's not indicated. Having said all this, I'd like to wrap up my presentation. Staff's recommendation is for return for redesign with these conditions. The applicant, I believe, is in the audience waiting to speak. And as I mentioned, we received a number of comments in opposition and the petition in support. And those were forwarded to the board members for consideration. I also forwarded the public comments that we received to the applicant and the property owner for their consideration. If there are no questions, I'd like to wrap up my presentation and I'm available for questions from the board.
Do board members have questions for Mr. Bigviki? Okay, seeing no questions, let us turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Benlian.
Good evening, Chair Welsh, Board Member Simonian, and Board Member Minas. Thank you for considering our project today. Given that this project has a little bit of history and a little bit of complexity, I'm kindly requesting that I have a little extra time for my portion. I know I get 5 minutes and the applicant gets 5 minutes, so maybe I'll end up using the entire 10 minutes and the applicant speaks for a couple minutes only, or the owner will speak for a few minutes only. If that's okay, because we did, unfortunately, throughout the process, the only feedback, this is an ongoing project for almost 3 years, a year and a half with the previous designer, and it was turned over to me a year and a half ago. And I don't want to speak about the previous one because obviously they didn't get anywhere. That's why they came to me. We spent a year and a half since I believe the submittal, the initial package that was submitted to the case planner happened in October 2020. The conversation between Chris and I started in July. And since October of 2020, we've been following up constantly to get some feedback on like which direction we're going. And the only feedback that we've received were like preliminary comments that were very technical. It's like, this section isn't very accurate, update the arborist report. We need the plans to be stamped by a landscape architect, these kind of comments. Like the first time we see comments in regards to the design and mass and scale and the color palette and all that stuff were in the packet when on early Monday morning when I went online. That's where I saw the comments. So we have not seen any of this. Chris had mentioned that they're going to recommend the return for redesign in one of his emails, but those comments weren't forwarded to me. So what we did is we took those comments and we kind of met all the conditions, and we have a revised design that I would like to share my screen and show you guys. I tried to submit it to staff, but unfortunately they said we can't take it due to some procedural thing. So, but I can definitely, they said you can ask the board and it's at the board discretion if they allow you to basically show the modifications you guys made to the design. So this is the kind of like the brief history. It started like when we submitted in July of 2020. It took until May of 2021, after various attempts of going after the case planning to just figure out if we have any comments. So 7 months later, seven and a half months later, we get the comments, the technical comments. We pick those up and we turn the project back. And here we are in December. We had to push to get on the board. So the owner has been struggling with, this is a burnt house. So they've been dislocated into an apartment. The family's been split in multiple places. They can't be together because they don't have space. And city attorney was sending letters to the owner telling him that if you're not proceeding with construction, we're going to proceed with some criminal matter against you. And the owner was like, I hired 2 designers. I paid for 2 design review board applications. This new application was, we paid for it new at the recommendation of the case planner, because they said that the earlier application, the hours were exhausted. So it was like start a new application. So throughout this whole time, the owner is being bombarded by city attorney to like move on, and the holdup basically it's not with the owner. It's like we're not getting any comments, and right now I see the comments in the packet. But from Monday until today, so we had 3 days to do. We did like a design charrette. Like we had multiple designers. We did all-nighters just to pick up as many of those comments. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against staff comments. I think they're wonderful and they're to the point as usual, but I wish I had them earlier. That's, or if you're gonna recommend a return for redesign, like why did I have to wait a year and a half for this recommendation? Why couldn't this like a year ago, you know, and these guys could have moved on with their house. So that's one. Second, I saw some of the letters of opposition that are coming. I don't know where these people live. I don't know where these addresses. When I share my screen, if you guys allow, we got a petition from 7 neighbors that are the surrounding neighbors to the property. The ones, there's only one neighbor that opposes, the one in the back with the big tree canopy. And the one to the right, Chris is correct. They did sign the petition in support, but then they sent a letter. They had an issue with the deck and with the balcony. And just since we saw a lot of opposition about the deck, so we eliminated the roof deck completely. So there is no roof deck in the project. We took out the stairs in the back. And that little patio in the back that's kind of close to the neighbor, it got reduced to half the size with an 8-foot planter to block any view. So there's absolutely no privacy issues here. So that's where we at. If you guys would like to to share some of the new elevation. So one of the most important comments I think staff made were the colors. I did the going with the earthy tones and all that, and after we did that, we really like what we came up with. So I appreciate that comment. And then the mass and scale, we did break it quite a bit. The black area that's not black anymore, the second portion of it got pushed back. The changed material on the second floor, we did stone cladding. It's not all stucco, it's not white. The second story got recessed from the garage. So almost every comment has been addressed, and the only exception is probably 1 or 2. If you guys would like, I can share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead, share your screen. Let's see what you've prepared.
So the elevations, these are the new elevations. So we've introduced the stone here in the backside. There's some stucco. There's some wood siding. This is the backside. The front, we have the. Let me grab the sheet. 7. We have stucco in this area. We have stone cladding in this area. This whole area here, it's not stucco anymore. It's some kind of natural stone that's more like towards the beige color. You guys will see it in the renderings. And this volume here that sits on top of the garage got shifted to the back. Now you'll see it in the perspectives. This is the side, again, more stone cladding. We broke down the mass. Roof deck is completely eliminated. Anyways, and the proposal was only for a portion of it that's away from the neighbors to be the roof deck, but we completely took it out. We took the stairs. This is the deck on this. No, that's from the side. Okay, you'll see it on the elevation. And over here, this is the area where you had that big black tile volume that goes up. We eliminated the second part here, so that's gone. And we went with the stone, and we went different material here, and this got pushed back, and that reduced the square footage by a few feet, and we shifted. There was a bathroom here, we shifted it into another space. These are some of the perspectives. I think I have, yeah. This is some of the revised perspectives, so you guys can see. This is the area where that black tower was going across all the way, so that's gone. It's not there anymore. In the
Mr. Binion, can you zoom in on each one of your renderings so we get a better sense of it?
Actually, I'm gonna share. Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna share. Stop sharing. I'm gonna share again and share the one that has the renderings. Because I knew you guys were gonna ask for that, so I prepared one that has share. Okay. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the front. So some of the staff recommendation was this trellis was bulky, it was coming all the way. So some of the recommendations was to notch it and push it back to reduce the scale. Other recommendations were to push this volume back, that got pushed back. And to break down the volume by using different materials, that's also done. So this is now a stone, some natural stone, and the stucco is happening over here. So we minimize the areas where stucco is. You can tell that we completely changed the tone and the colors of the building from the white and black, the bold white and black, and we went with the natural colors, that the earth looking colors that goes with the Glendale design line. We go to the next one. Okay. So this is kind of like a bird's eye that explains what's happening. So the roof deck completely gone, no railing, nothing. So that made a huge change in terms of like the mass and scale. It was adding an additional bulk and was making it look like there is a third floor there. So I agree with some of the complaints that some of these letters were addressed. So we took that out. We have this patio here that doesn't look really into anything. So it's far away from the neighbors. It's far away. It looks to the front street. This is the notch I was talking about. This is the back side. So you can tell this box here, it continued to the top before and it was all black and bold. Even though this area is visible, it's not really visible because it's upslope and it's from the street, you barely can see, like it's set back quite a bit from the street, but we still addressed it. We took out this volume here and we changed, this is different material, this is different material, and we changed the colors. Let's go to this one. Okay, and okay. And this is the back side. I don't know why it's doing this. Okay, this is the back side again. Undulations. I mean, you can tell the windows that look to where there's properties nearby. They're narrow. They're small. They're higher up. So to address privacy issues, the bigger windows, the glass windows, they typically either look to the backyard or to the side yard where you don't see anything. The neighboring house that sits over in this area here is covered by a canopy of trees. Like I know in their letter where they complained, they said this will block sunlight and I don't know what. You can see a thing from over there. The trees cover the entire thing. They even attached some photos from their property. I think you can even see the story poles. So that's that. I would like to share one more thing. So this is the property, and this is the area that I'm talking about, the only opposing neighbor. These people also, they signed a petition in support, and then they sent the letter about the deck. The deck was eliminated, and the balcony that is concerning to them was eliminated, or that was cut in half and had a planner, so no issues there. So this signed the petition, 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 this signed the petition. This guy wasn't home when the petitions were collected, and I think this person wasn't home when the petition. So it was this neighbor, and you can see from this Google image, the canopy that I'm talking about, you cannot, it's you go to that area, it's pitch dark as it is because of all the trees. It has nothing to do with where we're at, and it sits much lower. It sits much lower, and it's set back quite a bit.
Okay, I see Vilya is calling time here, so I think we can wrap it up there. But I do want to give the board members an opportunity, since you're presenting something new here. We probably have had questions here. So, okay, yes.
Yes, hello. The applicant indicated that he would like to make a presentation of plans addressing staff's comments, and I was not privy to the timeline or the interactions between the case planner and the applicant itself. So apologies, I cannot speak to that. But as protocol, we do not encourage the board to make a decision on the revised plans simply because neither staff nor the public have been able to review these, unlike the original set of plans that were posted online and available for public review and comment. So if the board so chooses to proceed with this, we respectfully request that the case be continued to the next date certain so that the public and staff have ample opportunity to review the revised proposal.
Can I just jump in real quick? Since the comments that Mr. Benlian is addressing were part of the staff report, I believe we could move forward with the discussion tonight if the board focuses only on the project as proposed,
correct,
recognizing that some of the changes you're looking at in this newer presentation may reflect some of staff's concerns, which the board may or may not share, and the board could express their opinion on the drawings that were presented for this case, knowing that the new return may come back looking something similar to what you have here, or be further modified, I imagine. Vilya, does that make sense as an
yes,
alternative?
thank you, Jay. That's a better explanation.
Okay. I would still like to give the board members an opportunity to ask questions here. When we get down to actually deliberating on the case, we can, take all that into consideration. So, go ahead, board member Simoni. I can't hear you.
You hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Thank you. Billion, thank you for the presentation and the revised drawings. I wanted to step back for a moment to get a bit more clarity, because I have some thoughts, but I also understand staff's position with the number of members of the community that have written in, and there's probably quite a bit of individuals waiting to speak on the case. So just stepping back, why did the team decide to submit a new application from the original application? Why was a second application for a design review board submitted with a new fee?
So when time came and I reached out to the case planner on the previous case, which was also Chris, I did ask him what his advice was, because he said that they did review the proposal that had happened prior to me taking on the project, and they felt that they had comments about it and all that. But I said, okay, so do I submit as a new application, or do I take your comments and just move forward with the comments? And his advice was, no, you need to submit as a new application because we've exhausted the hours allocated for the project already. So that's why we submitted the new application.
How long has this house been burned?
A little over 3 years.
So the surrounding neighbors have been dealing with a burned house for 3 years while we've been going through the process?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. With the city attorney coming after my client, and again, we've submitted plans for the past year and a half. I have not seen one design comment up until the package was uploaded.
Thank you for that clarification. Here are my thoughts initially, Mr. Chair, on this unique situation. In the past, we've had certainly many cases where an applicant brings forth different scenarios, different schemes based on staff's conditions. You know, they've had, let's say, time to review the conditions, and they come with one or two options, and we pick them. For example, the Glenmark Hotel struck out as an example. I don't know why I just thought of it, but you know, there were conditions that staff had, and that developer had brought different screening material for the facade, different ideas, and then we actually said, hey, we like some of screening from Scheme A, and we liked certain things from B, etc. And Billy is holding up a sign, but I can't read it. I'm sorry.
Sevan, could you stop sharing your screen, please?
Sure.
And so it's not unusual for an applicant to bring forth comments or ideas based on conditions. So I don't particularly have an issue with that. However, in this scenario, where a house has been burned down for this long and an applicant has gone through this process for this long with 2 different submittals, for the team to get these conditions for a return with redesign with so many items, it'd be hard, I think, to address it in a few days. And so my thoughts would be, and my question to you, Mr. Billion, is that if you had a bit more time, say dates specific in January, would you be able to develop and address staff comments with a greater level of detail than what you've been able to do in 3 days? Because I could see a lot of difference from was proposed to what is being revised, an elimination of a roof deck, which probably takes a lot of concerns away, stepping back of the 2nd floor in many areas, reshifting the mass, and etc. So would a date specific allow you to put your best foot forward with addressing these conditions? And so then we and the public would have an opportunity to revisit your kind of revised scheme based on staff's conditions. That's my question to you.
Absolutely. More time means if the only issue with that is the owner is eager to move forward, because again, 3 years in the waiting, and he's afraid if we go through another round, that this is gonna drag for another God knows how long. Go for it.
Go ahead, Mr. Platt.
If I could recommend, similar to what I said before, if the board issues its comments tonight, I think that would be the speediest way to move this forward. If your decision is to do a return for redesign, which given the public interest in this, I think is probably by far the best option. What I would recommend, and we'll have to talk about this internally, but we completely understand Mr. Benlian's concerns about the late notice, the lack of communication, and we will try our best to waive a fee. Usually there's a return for redesign fee, and Vilya may be able to answer this better than I can, but I think we should try to waive that so there isn't a penalty given where we are in this process. And then we could come back to a hearing. The public will get full notice of and full ability to review the revised drawings. They'll be able to comment tonight. You'll hear their comments, and that will inform your decisions and your comments, rather than just waiting for a continued hearing. So.
Well, my thought on that, and I understand that, is that if we make our comments based on what's proposed in the packet, we all realize that all that is going to change. In fact, we have an applicant that's willingly meeting and will meet most of the conditions. So I personally think it's worth our while, and for the public, if we say, provide a revised scheme where, in the spirit of a burned house that's been burned for 3 years, where the neighbors have dealt with it, where the city attorney has criminal case going against the applicant for lack of progress, why would, I just don't understand why we would not say, okay, well, let's come back in January. The public has reviewed these drawings, which were reviewed very quickly by the public, and they would have the same opportunity to review the revised drawings, and so would we. And I'm not sure what we'd be missing if wouldn't we be in a better spot?
I think what
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
I was going to say, I think what we'd be missing is the staff's ability to give it a thorough vetting, which they typically would do on these cases, and to be able to prepare a full staff report in the same level of detail as Mr. Bigdikian provided today.
The other issue, and Vilya can correct me if I'm wrong, If we continue to a date certain, we don't publicly notice the hearing again. If we do a return for redesign, it gets publicly noticed. The formal process, I think, is more transparent for the public and probably better. So.
If may I speak, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I'm okay with the return for redesign if we give a specific date and we get we get specific conditions from the board tonight. Because we're not going to deal with the same stuff that we were dealing before. It was just like useless. Like I send an email and it takes 3 months for the email to be answered, and I need to reach out to like 10 different supervisors to get an email answered. I mean, if we're gonna go through that process again, that means this is gonna drag another 5 years. So give me direction and give me a date and I'm fine with that.
I'm not sure that it's going to be within our purview.
Yes, Chair Welch, board members, Mr. Benlian, we cannot guarantee a date simply because we don't know what that project is going to look like, what the turnaround is, zoning issues. And so we can promise that it would be handled most expeditiously once it is submitted. Yet at this point in time, we would not be able to make a date certain. So, and Jay is correct. The board essentially needs to act on the proposal that was submitted. If the board so chooses to return for redesign, once we do receive a package and we can try to make accommodations regarding the reapplication fee, we will try to get to the board, back to the board as soon as possible. That rest assured. And
how many callers are in queue for this?
Right now, we actually have 8 on hold.
Mr. Chair, I absolutely agree with what we'd be missing is what you pointed out, and that's a very good point. What we'd be missing is staff's review. I feel as though staff has done such a good job pointing out all the deficiencies and all the issues, where I really understand the site. Now, that said, if we're going to go through and assess a project that's literally going to get tossed out and redesigned in a quick 2-3 weeks by the applicant, it seems as though it's a very big waste of time to look at something that's going to completely change. But I'll go along with what my colleagues want to do. And if that's the direction we're taking, then we're going to go through it. But I understand it's just going to get tossed out and it's going to get, redesigned per what was depicted by the applicant plus some, because I would imagine if the applicant's done this much work on 2 days, with 2 weeks or a month, they're going to do just that much more because now they really understand the conditions.
Yeah, I think that we still have to opine on this. I think we have to listen to the public. I think we have to opine on it. We may not always agree with staff's conditions. So I think it is important that we go through the process to give the applicant as clear direction as possible for what the board believes and feels, taking into account the public's viewpoint. So, I hear what you're saying, and it will take some time to go through this, but unfortunately, I think that is the correct thing for us to proceed with. So with that, I think unless there's any other questions for the applicant specifically, whether for the new, ideas that he presented, which are just ideas at this point in time. It is not the submission. The submission packet is the submission that we have to be taking comments on and providing comments and feedback to the applicant on. Okay, so let us then go ahead and proceed to open up the public hearing and take callers on the matter. And we'll proceed.
Would you like the property owner or any other project team members speak prior to the public testimony?
I think Mr. Benlian took enough time. If the owner wants to take 2 minutes, like any other member of the public, that's okay.
Just 1 minute, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Just 1 minute from it's okay. But
Thank you. And if you don't mind identifying yourself, please, for the record.
Okay,
Thank
sorry,
you.
yeah. Aram Manukian, resident of City of Glendale since 1995, and I'm living in the 2667 Bogu Drive since 2005. And the tragedy will happen after all.
I think we've had an internet connection issue.
That's a dramatic point to lose contact.
Yeah. Okay, we'll give it a few seconds, but if it doesn't return, I think we'll just move on and give him a chance to talk again.
Yeah, we're back.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right.
Yeah, you
Proceed.
can-
Yep. Yep.
Sorry, yeah. So I say after the tragedy, what happened, the burning house, and I'm living that house since 2005. And whatever happened, what we're going through with my family, and I think it's our personal things. But the only thing I'm asking the board and chairman and everybody, please, I mean, we understand all the conditions, everything, but why it taking 3 years to give us the conditions right now? I changed the first architect because of, I thought maybe, I don't know, he's 20 years old or 20 years experience architect. I changed the second, I'll come to the second architect, the same thing over and happen. So it's not a thing about staff giving the corrections, but corrections is been, why we didn't have the correction before and we fix it. I've just heard about the colors just now. Both architects never mentioned about the colors before. And about the other issues were brought it up by Chris. So if you give us if the Chris give us on time all the corrections, we'll do it, no problem. We have good hardworking architects and we can fix all these problems 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and I'm not gonna suffering with my family to rent out this apartment to another apartment. So I don't understand why it has to take 3 months to answer the email and why it's taking 3 years to come to this point for me to talk with the board and tell them, Sevan did a great job in 2 days. He did all the corrections, 85%, whatever been told by case planner. But why we didn't have that corrections 2 years ago, year and a half ago, 6 months ago, 8 months ago? Why we have to run after like Sevan? I'm calling, begging Sevan, what's going on? I mean, and 4 months it's passed, we don't have the response. 4 months, 6 months, another 6 months, no response. Yeah, we're ready to, with all respect to the board and city, we value all the city's rules, regulations. I'm a non-profit organization. I know how to follow and all those things, but give us advice. We can do it right away.
Okay, we're going to endeavor to do that tonight and give you that advice. And tonight will be, as official as it comes because we are the design review board. So we'll give you clear directions tonight and then you can move forward. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the first public caller, please.
The first caller is Surjik Shabani. Surjik Shabani, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yeah, hi, this is Surjik Shabani. I'm the neighbor across the street from him. And I've been living here for almost 15 years. I'm in full support of taking off this project. It's been bothering me for the last 3 years, and I still don't understand why it should have taken so long. And it's an eyesore for us. And every time I drive by, I see a burned house in front of me. I just want this house to be taken care of. And I'm in full support of this project. I wanted to get it off the land and, get it started as soon as possible. And I'm asking the board nicely that please, let's go ahead and do all the work that maybe we can get this thing off the ground and get it working. That's all my concern is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nancy Klein, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hi, this is Nancy Klein. I live in the Verdugo Woodlands since 1978, specifically on Verdugo Knolls Drive. I have been involved in the neighborhood since 1978, trying to protect this beautiful Verdugo Woodlands area. I'm concerned about the future of the Verdugo Woodlands. What is puzzling to me is the burden of managing these McMansions, these huge projects that are proposed, is generally placed on the neighbors, the residents. I have been involved in 7 different projects that we successfully got changed, starting with the one right after I moved in. This guy wanted to build 3 stories behind me and tower over into my little cottage. The situation is really is very serious because I see lots of builders with very sad stories about, heart disease and their family tragedies. And frankly, a lot of them have been not true. It seems that the builders come in and they build, or the owners, they build for themselves without consideration of the neighborhood that they're going to be living in and building in. There are guidelines that the Design Review Board has taken many years to develop and continually improve. It seems to me that if someone is going to build a house, you first get to know what the guidelines are, follow the guidelines. The architect comes up with a plan that is according to the guidelines, and then it doesn't have to go into a situation like this particular one where the design board is now trying to clean up this ambiguous design. And then the builder says, well, we could change this or we could change that. And it's been my experience, a lot of people promise a lot of changes, and there's been a lot of building in this city where the builders say they're going to do something verbally, it doesn't happen, and things, well, there's been all kinds of situations where the builders and the owners didn't follow the guidelines. This particular house is double the size of the existing property. It's out of character. The idea of a rooftop and all those decks, is this going to be a party house or a recreational area? I can't imagine living next to a house like this. The other houses are modest, and there's landscaping. This house is out of character. The mass and volume is outrageous. It's a hillside property. The noise at a rooftop and all those balconies. And can you imagine the blocking of the sunlight and the air space for the neighbors next door? It is far. One more thing. Let me just finish.
Very quickly.
The petition of the people that signed in favor. I have seen this happen before on Tamerlane and Samarkand, where a nice person goes around to the neighbors and says, oh, we're trying to build this house, and would you please sign? Then the neighbors sign. They have no clue of what they signed. They feel bad for the person they're talking to. So I don't believe that petition is valid, because the people in Verdugo Woodlands were adamant about protecting our charming neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it, but you're out of time now. So thank you very much for your call.
Rick Obradors, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board. Rick Obradors. Rick, Obradors, you're live on the air. Mr. Rick Obradors, please call back if you'd like to speak to the DRB. Thank you. Shauna Bonston, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Shauna Bonson, and I live at 1818 Pasta Glen Drive. This is a historic resources listed on the Glendale Register. We are the closest neighbor, the one marked with a big X. We are not visible from the aerials as was seen tonight because we are under tree canopies, but we certainly can see the project. It would loom over us 64 feet in length, cutting out the entirety of our sun as visible from our windows. We do have a long shared lot line that follows a crest, and we are downslope from the applicant, and they should be downslope from the crest. I am an urban planner by profession and education, 20 years now with the City of Los Angeles, the Deputy Director for the Los Angeles City Planning Department. As design professionals, we cannot write meaningful conditions without accurate plans. And thankfully, the staff report raises a number of excellent points in regard to the application materials and plan deficiencies. The number of conditions and corrections may make it impossible for anyone to understand what is being proposed or for the board to approve it. I counted 32 identified issues and 16 conditions of approval. I'm sure this project took so long in the process because the plans are really rubbish. They absolutely have not addressed all the issues by the new design that we saw a glimpse of tonight. In fact, they may have unintended consequences when trying to fix or address others. So we concur with the staff's recommendation to be returned for a redesign. And what we saw today remains out of character, and the massing is not appropriate. The plans do show the applicant with a flat lot, and our house is never shown in the plans today. I implore you to come see the site and see how close our house is to their house. It is impossible to understand the slope and the hillside conditions by the maps and the plans. I'm curious if the city attorney is present. I would like to bring to their attention that findings cannot be made in conformance with the hillside design guidelines. I hope the board can deliberate and review these pursuant to the municipal code. Hillside design findings are required as part of the land use element of the general plan. We ask this code section be up for everyone to review and to view when the time comes. And as you know, DRB decisions related to development in the R1R zones shall incorporate hillside development review policy contained in code section 30.11.040A. That has every discretionary decision made by the city along with city boards in the R1R zone. So take the following into consideration: Glendale Municipal Code, hillside design guidelines, and the landscape design guidelines for hillside development. Development is supposed to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size, scale, bulk mass, roofing, orientation, setbacks, and site layout, which it is not. The architectural style and architectural elements of infill development shall be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Furthermore, with current project, design review standards cannot be met in code section 30.47030B3 because the development is unreasonably impacting the privacy of the buildings and outdoor spaces. In our lot, which is an R1R lot, the building is the largest of the houses of all 18 surveyed by the city. This is the only other house over 3,000 square feet, and the only other one is double that size for the lot. The design needs a lot of work to be compatible. The previous house was just one story with a pitched roof, and there's no reason this new one can't be that as well. We have 9 oak trees on our property. The arborist report said one of our trees would be impacted, but not significantly. However, with the plans that show cut and retaining walls and a report that says the plans have changed or not changed, I don't trust the arborist had the correct information. Furthermore, the weight of the backfill from the drip line of the trees will kill them, so there is no comfort level in the information that we have. Due to bad plans and poor design, we are very opposed. We would be open to supporting accurate plans reflecting a one-story structure or even 15 feet from current grade, no rooftop terraces, no exterior stairs abutting our property, only feet away, and arborist-supported evidence of no impact to our oak trees, and no required removal of a tree on our property or shared property line due to construction. We do have a significant tree that would have to be removed.
Okay. I'm going to have to cut you off. You've gone over time. Thank you very much for your call.
Thank you.
Linda Conover, Linda Conover, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yes, I live at 2659 Bogue Drive. I'm the neighbor on the east side of Mr. Manukian, and I do have some concerns. So you did address the one concern I had regarding the roof decking and privacy, but I'm also concerned that there is still a deck on the back side of the house, which would be, again, looking into my yard. I also concur very strongly with everything that Shauna Bonstein has just said. And I do want to know, will someone come out and look at how close this house is to our properties and the issues with privacy, and also with the compatibility of the house with the neighborhood. And I feel that Nancy Klein expressed it. I'm a 30-year resident in this house, and it would not. I just feel this house would not be compatible. It's boxy, it's large, and it just does not support, I think, the ambience of our neighborhood. I'm also concerned because I still feel that there's another patio there off the bedroom, off that third bedroom over the garage, and about the bedroom windows. I know they're up there and they're split, but I still feel that it's very close to my property. And that is all that I have to say, but I would hope that the board would recommend that they come back with a redesign that is compatible with the neighborhood and that lends to the integrity of our neighborhood. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pablo Selinar. Pablo Selinar, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Pablo Selinar. I very recently moved into 2650 Bogue Drive. I can see the site from our window, and I can see it from my deck, and I can see the posts from both as well. So I'm very concerned about privacy, very concerned about that second story. I don't understand why there was a proposed second story back in the year 2000. It was denied, and I don't understand why it's allowed now. It should not be allowed. And on the design side, I mean, I know that taste is subjective. I really don't think this goes with the character of the neighborhood. We just moved in, so I have not done all the homework that Shauna has done, but I agree 100% with her. And yeah, just, I would love to see a new house there built, not this one. You need to be considerate with the neighbors. If you want design review, you know what's the best way to do it? Come knock on our doors. Ask us, do you like this? We're not going to design your house, but we will give you feedback. We want you living here and want you building a new house. But you need to be considerate right next to the people that you're going to live with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brooks Bonston. Brooks Bonston, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hi, my name is Brooks Bonston. I live at 1818 Past the Glen Drive as well. Again, I'm the property on the northern side of the property in question here this evening. I want to thank the board for taking all these public comments and taking the time to review these. It really it means a lot to us. And again, as my wife iterated earlier, our home is a City of Glendale designated historic property. And unlike the subject proposal, is modest and designed in full respect to the topography and hillside characteristics. It steps up the hillside with a maximum height well below the ridgeline. Our view of the house is the facade with the large windows and exterior stairs, well, in the previous design, obviously. And it's a monolithic box. Despite what the applicant has said about tree canopy issues, that satellite photo shows the top of a tree canopy. It doesn't show the actual view from the ground, which is through tree trunks. So we look right against this property. They are at the very minimum setback from the property line at 10 feet, I think is what it is in Glendale. And if it's 10 feet, it's an inch in 10 feet. The proposed house is not in scale with the previous original home, nor with the neighborhood character. The two-story building is not in keeping with the predominantly one-story and cascading split-level homes in the neighborhood. The proposal doesn't represent thoughtful hillside development, including having the slope and site characteristics inform the design. The new house would be the largest in the neighborhood, as has been previously pointed out. It's just not in keeping. In these packets, we don't see a lighting plan or a drainage plan, and I'd love to see that in this whatever new proposal comes from the applicant. And I'd like also to point out that all the surrounding houses have a pitched roof, even the single-story mid-century modern ones. The only purpose for the flat roof is to have a large rooftop terrace, as was previously proposed, and that would be an egregious impact on our property. Also like to point out, sound travels so much in these hillside canyons that this would cause noise problems for the neighborhood in its entirety. And as for public right-of-way, I think the sidewalk issue brought up earlier, we really need to hear the board weigh in on that as well. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to review this and for taking the time to hear these public comments and consider the 19 submissions you got. I also, in closing, would like to point out this petition that came around. I wasn't privy to that, but from my understanding, no plans were presented at the time of the petition. In no disrespect to Mr. Manukian, but as he came around with his signature form, he didn't say, here's the plan, this is what we're trying to sign. He just said, here, sign this, we want to build the house. And of course, we've been looking at this eyesore for, it's actually been in excess of 4 years since it's burned. And anyone in the neighborhood would want to see that go away, but I think what's replacing it is an improvement. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Selena Schreiber. Selena Schreiber, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Yes, hello. I have a few comments. I also live around the neighborhood, and my concerns are the proportions of the house as well. I believe it's a little too intimidating, a little too large, and I appreciate the fact that the owners are trying to work with everybody. But now I also have a problem if there is going to be a second floor there. I don't understand why those small windows that are there, the two large doors on the second floor. And I know we live in a fire hazard zone, and I believe that in order to allow the small windows, they're making the owner put two doors there, but it just does not. That whole look is, to me, it doesn't look right. It doesn't go with what the neighborhood looks like. And it's true that this neighborhood has gone through changes, but we need to try to keep the integrity, as the previous speakers have said. And also, I don't know. I just feel like they should take more time to review. I know the owner is concerned, and I know we're all tired of looking at the burned down house. But before anything goes up, we have to be in some type of accordance that this is going to be good for the neighborhood and not something that's just being reformed in 2 minutes and then, done right away and not given enough thought. But I do, want to say that I appreciate something's going to be done, but we need to, unfortunately, we need to look at those details because those are very important to everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Philip Jacobs. Philip Jacobs, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Thank you. I'm the neighbor directly across the street, 2664 Bogue Drive. My wife and I live there. This house burned actually in January of 2017, so it's coming up on 5 years. And every morning we wake up and we look out the kitchen window, we see this burnt house. It is, as you can imagine, it's pretty depressing to look at that. We've contacted the city. They've come out several times. I'm really nervous about the retaining wall that's there now. It's about to fall down. All the palm trees are extremely overgrown and big limbs are falling down to where cars are parked on the street. I've sent almost a dozen emails to the city attorney's office asking them to get involved. You cannot live in a city, a modern city like this, and allow a house being burned down for 5 years with neighbors having to look at it. And the city have actually stopped responding to my emails because they're fed up with me. I think what should happen is, and I asked Mr. Manukian this too about 6 months ago, because my wife and I have finally decided to give up, and we're going to sell our house and move out of this neighborhood because we don't want to look at this house any longer. This house should have been demolitioned or taken down many, many years ago. Or I asked Mr. Manukian, please put up a big green fence so we don't have to look at this, especially now that my wife and I have our house on the market. Our realtor is saying that about half the people that come through ask about the house burned down across the street. It's definitely going to affect our resale value. We don't know where it's going to end up, if we're going to be able to sell it or not. But it's obviously very frustrating, and I wish the city attorney and the city of Glendale would have gotten involved a lot sooner and done something. Is there a chance we can get a big green fence put up or get the house demolition fairly quickly?
Unfortunately, that's not a question that this board is equipped to answer, but I will ask staff to look into that matter.
Okay, so 5 years later, you're going to ask the staff to look into it.
Again, that's not an issue that we really have any jurisdiction over at this board. So we're really here to adjudicate on the plans that are being presented.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
David Manukian, you're live on the air with the Design Review Board.
Hello, guys. So I was a previous resident of the house. I grew up there. I lived there 13 years. So most of my childhood was spent there. But after the tragedy, we moved. In 3 years, we moved to 3 different houses. So we're just hoping that we could just build the house according to your guidelines as quickly as possible, so we could just move back.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Surjik Shabani called back. He was the first speaker this evening. Do you wish to hear more from him, or shall?
Was he the one who was not there?
No, he is the speaker who spoke first, and he spoke for 3 minutes. So.
Oh, okay. Then I'm not sure that there's anything more to add there. Any other speakers?
Thank you. No, there are no other speakers this evening.
Okay, very well. Mr. Benlian, as is standard, we will give you a couple of minutes to respond to some of the calls, just to stay with protocols here.
Sure. I don't think there is much to address other than what I've stated previously. I think the revised submission that we tried to get in addresses most of them, because it addresses the ones about the roof deck. It also addresses the one about the patio of the immediate neighbor. As I mentioned, we did in the new submission, there is an 8-foot planter that was planted on the side. So there's absolutely no privacy issue on that end. In regards of a 1-story and in regards of the comments about building a house that's double the size, that's not true. The house that was there was like 2,100 or 2,200 square feet, and we're proposing a 3,000 square foot house. It's not double the size, and 3,000 for today's standard is not a mansion, and it's not a massive house, and it's not a big house. And right directly near the properties, there are homes that are larger. So I don't want to take the time and pull up the aerial, but there are homes that are larger than that. And if we needed to adjust it by a few hundred square feet and lose something, we're open for that as well.
Okay.
That's about it. But in terms of the style, I don't think staff had an issue with the style, and they said the style is present in that area. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so Board Member Simonian, you had a comment to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering how you would like to proceed. What is the most efficient way to give concise feedback?
Mm-hmm.
If we want to have some of the revised ideas up while we're talking, say, hey, that's in the right direction or not? Or how would you like to proceed?
I think that we should start from staff's conditions. I mean, there were 16 of them. So first of all, I think we should see if there's general consensus on our viewpoint with those. And particularly if there's anything else that we feel about, or we want to give any particular guidance on any of those, because some of them are really are fairly generic. And if we could give anything at all more specific, I think we should do that. But yes, given the hour and the need for the applicant to hear things, I want to give them as much as we can and as concrete as we can in terms of feedback. So that's what I would recommend is we first give each of us perspective on the conditions, and then supplement with some detail as we can. And if we want to pull up those new submissions to help as a guide, that's okay with me. I have no objection to that. Okay.
And for example, sheet A14 in the submitted package has 4 renderings that depict the house from different angles. I'm wondering if perhaps the applicant could put up the new revised A14 where it has a depiction of the 4 renderings of the new design as we're kind of going through these conditions, where we could, if necessary, point to it and say, well, that's in the right direction or that's not in the right direction, etc. That might help me at least. Because I figured if he's gone in that direction, that's probably the direction he'd like, the trajectory he's taking.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Benlian, are you able to do that for us? Okay, Mr. Simonian, so let's go ahead and begin deliberation. So I'll let you lead off.
I'll order on this one. Well, I'd like to, I think, start off by taking a step back again. I think anybody that's dealt with such a long process trying to get a house rebuilt on a burnt site is something that we don't want to see. And so the idea is to try to help this evening by providing direct feedback so that we could move this process along. I also appreciate the neighbors calling in and giving us their perspective. We always place the highest kind of, we weigh in the immediate neighbors usually first and as the primary source of comments, because they're the ones that live with the project. They live with that property, so they have a lot better idea of the details and the nuances, and then the secondary neighborhood. In this particular case, we have a house that's kind of a peninsula, right? So it's sticking out. And I believe the current site plan, which has the house closer to the east side, the east side is the right direction. We don't want a house creeping onto the west side of that peninsula. It's just a site planning concept. And so I like the fact that there's a lawn and that kind of paved area on the west side of the peninsula or flat area proposed, and that the house isn't kind of going and gravitating in that area, because then I think it would create a lot of mass in that corner. And I don't particularly have an issue with the second floor if it's pulled back to the east side, and if it's also pulled back from the street and also from the west. I think the rooftop deck, the applicant has already pared it back, but perhaps there's some more room there to kind of stay away from the deck as much as possible and to utilize that beautiful ground level as much as possible, because that may alleviate quite a bit of issues with the surrounding neighbors. I think overall, the staggered windows could be simplified, which the architect has said he's already going to do. And a little more of a conformity in the windows would help. The lower two renderings on the ground level and the way the house steps back on the upper levels, I think do a good job from addressing some of the comments that staff had. When I'm looking at sheet A14, which I have on my top screen, at the lower bottom right corner rendering, there's that vertical dark colored mass, which has been completely eliminated on the second floor and stepped back, for example. That is definitely in the right direction, because that was adding a whole bunch of mass to that end unit and end of that house. Similarly, the deck over the entryway of the house has been pulled back, and that canopy has been softened up. So when I'm looking at the revised rendering at the bottom right, at the top right, I believe the way that deck steps back is in the positive direction. Before it was a bit top heavy. I like the overall brick veneer. I think is more successful on the top two renderings versus some of that other stone material that was used elsewhere. I think it has a more traditional sense to it. So that could be something the architect could look into. Overall, I thought the stairs on the north side were excessive, and I could see that neighbor to the north having issues with their privacy. And if those stairs are eliminated, that would, I think, soften that up quite a bit. And I think the architect and the applicant are already stepping back from that deck somehow. And if it could be eliminated in its entirety, I think would be a huge compromise. So if the applicant came back without a roof deck, in my mind, and in the direction that I think it would be in the direction of a serious compromise with the surrounding neighbors. Now, could a deck be located in such a way that's not as intrusive? I believe so. And those would have been some of the thoughts I would have asked the applicant to look into if it was a date certain return, was that. However, I think the applicant is very talented. He's reading us loud and clear. And if a deck is absolutely necessary from the ownership's point of view, then there needs to be some serious thought process integrated into its location integration to reduce privacy issues. In regards to the site planning and the garden walls, retaining walls, I believe Mr. Minas can have some meaningful thoughts on that to address some of staff's comments. But in general, I believe the revised direction is absolutely in the right direction. And I think a two-story house that's nestled onto the east side will have less of a bearing and less of a mass if it's a one-story that just covers the whole peninsula area, flat area, with a rooftop deck. I think that would be in the wrong direction. So I actually like the site planning with the nuances of all these additions that have occurred, which is staff's comments, which are all good comments, and I believe if they're integrated, and it'll help the project tremendously, and it should take care of and address a lot of the comments that the surrounding neighbors have as well. So those are my initial thoughts. I'm sure there's going to be more collaboration amongst us board members here. So I'll just end for now with that, and then we'll see where we need to take it from there.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Minas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive report by staff on this project. Again, I also reviewing the original plan, I had some issues with the roof deck and of course the staircase in the back, which has been, corrected by the architect. I'm going to step away from the building and look at the building pad that was graded a long time ago, maybe 50s, to house single-family residences. I looked at this property and I believe that the building pad has been created through a cut fill operations. It's a transition lot where in the upslope side, maybe towards the east is cut, and then it was common that they would push the dirt over the slope to kind of expand the pad. I walked the building pad and looked at the improvements, the block walls at the top of the slope. They're in very despair condition. I mean, they're all leaning, downhill, suggesting that there is a creep problem on a slope below this building pad. And then I looked at the slope above this, the east, the slope to the east, ascending slope to the east, and then the neighbor building pad is almost like 15 feet above our building pad. And I saw signs of erosion and superficial instability on that slope, which also confirms that even the building pad on the top was created through cut fill operations. I didn't quite understand where on the staff report, the site slope and grading, where that 1,500 cubic foot earth movement is less than that, but I hardly see from the grading concept of this project that they're just expanding the building pad towards the north a little bit. And I mean, hardly even 50 cubic yard of earth, mostly excavation, cutting operation, will be required to create the finished grade of the new building pad. I totally agree with Mr. Simonia's assessment of the design of the windows and everything else. And I definitely like the new rendering, the new plan that was presented by the architect, which is, considerably more superior, pleasant to look at, and the mass revision than the previous plan. And I think, the architect is going in the right direction, and with additional conditions, this could be a, good project. I don't particularly, I have difficulty with two-story structures as long as the mass is controlled, the second story is controlled by maybe some kind of setback. With the revision that, the staff will recommend and will, look it over, I think this would be a good project for the neighborhood. By the way, although the surrounding buildings are mostly one story, the building to the north east of this project is maybe three story high. I just looked through the openings of the landscape, and there are larger buildings in this neighborhood that are there, and this is not going to be the highest or tallest building in this neighborhood. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was my comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna, just for the expediency of time, just really focus on a few things to add to this, because largely I concur with the sentiments already expressed. But I'll start by stating that I believe staff exactly nailed the conditions. I fully support every single one of them that was laid out there, including number 8, where I would really just focus on the elimination of the roof deck and the access stair, which it appears that the applicant is happy to do, because I think that that was a major contributor to issues of privacy, issues of enhanced scale. And the other comments I think are quite good. Where I think I can try and add a little bit more clarity and direction would be taking a look at the fascias, particularly on the trellises. I think that they are, when I think of trellises, I think of something that helps to soften, the edge or a transition. But these, as they're done with these very, very tall fascias, they just seem excessive, and I think that should be restudied, either pulling them back or rethinking how they're done, because they show, even in the new submissions tonight, they're still quite boxy, and I think that they just further enhance the mass. Mr. Benlian is right. The square footage isn't necessarily overly huge. It could be, I think, scaled down a little bit, particularly if you focus on trying to pull the second story back a little bit from both the south side and the west side a little bit, so that it does step back and follow the top topography a bit better. I think that would improve things. I also believe that the window plans, you've got really 3 different kinds of window schemes going here, and I think it will be best to just choose one. I think the one with, where you've got the more vertically oriented window below with like a horizontal clear story above in like this L shape, I think that works well where it's shown on the plan, on the elevations, and I think that should be continued throughout, rather than these stepping little horizontal windows or these tall vertical windows stacked 3 by 3. I think that's more uniformity there would help create a more coherent design and be more pleasing. I think that's reducing the 2-story volume at the anchor area could also help considerably. You could be able to pull that portion or some portion of the 2nd story back without really sacrificing square footage, but it would have a meaningful impact in terms of the presentation of the mass and scale of the project to the street. So those would be my additional points. I'm generally not opposed to a modern style home. I think that's, we as a board are charged with reviewing the design as it's presented, and not necessarily forcing an applicant to adopt the design in a particular neighborhood. But as it has been pointed out by callers and within the guidelines, we are tasked to try to make these, comport some way. And typically in a case like this, it would be trying to do things that might emulate roof forms, the use of materials. And I think that the roof really represents an area where the applicant can be creative and try to do some things. You can still have a modern design house that doesn't have to have, flat, uniform roofs. I think that there's some areas to explore in trying to vary that up a little bit. That can be a nod to the predominant roof forms in the neighborhood, while still maintaining a modern aesthetic. So that would be my feedback. Mr. Simonian, do you want to comment on anything that I or Board Member Minas had said?
Mr. Benlian, and apologies, Chair Welch, would you mind stop sharing your screen simply because members of the public are unable to tell who is speaking from the board. So thank you so much.
Chair, I agree with my colleagues, and I think we're all on the same page. We all agree that the proposed design today, the revised changes that were presented today during the hearing are in the right direction. And I think as the applicant has time to work through those changes, really addressing one by one all staff's conditions, then we'll be able to have a much better project. And so I would like to actually ask the applicant if he has questions for us about clarity, because I think we've given so much. And so at this point, both staff and the applicant need to understand us and need to work together to quickly try to move this project along.
Okay, let me first give it to Mr. Platt to lead off with questions, because that might help answer some of those questions.
Might being the operative word. I understand that the board has accepted the gist of all of the staff conditions. Obviously, some of those have been addressed in this revised proposal. We can look for further refinement on that. I have to say, we unfortunately never had the opportunity to work with the applicant as the design team on this project. I think we could have worked well together to come up with some ideas that might have stopped some of the issues we have. If I heard Mr. Welsh correctly, the concept of the flat roof, I think this project would be immensely benefited if we could move with the shallow pitched hipped roof at both the first and second floors, and then find opportunities to find more roof area at the lower floor, including possibly reducing the size of the 300 square foot deck off the master bedroom facing the street. If the board wants to give us the discretion to kind of work at that point, I think the bedroom above the garage is a strange layout for a bedroom. It could be reoriented to give more relief to the north and possibly to the east as well, providing opportunity for intervening roof lines to kind of soften this mass and tie the floors together better. So hearing the board, so I'm throwing out some other ideas, and that's the direction I think we would like to be able to work in, to take this maybe even a little bit beyond the 16 conditions that you have, and without revising the whole project, which I understand has been in the works forever, see if we could come back with something that hopefully fits the neighborhood a little bit better. And I just want to remind everyone in the public also, some of the comment letters were kind of this neighborhood has what we call modern style houses throughout the neighborhood. They're just modern style from a different era than the contemporary way we look at modernism. So I think there's, as Mr. Welsh mentioned, there's room to be different and modern and still be compatible. So that would be a direction we'd try to work with the applicant. In terms of specifics, I think I basically heard a general consensus that the staff conditions are the basis that we should move forward with the applicant. Mr. Simonian?
I totally agree with everything that's being said this evening. In order to meet the kind of sense of urgency of this vacant home sitting there for the surrounding neighbors and the community, do you think it would be wise, perhaps the case planner, yourself, and the applicant get together as quickly as time permitting? And
I think, yes, definitely.
Perfect.
Okay. Mr. Bentley, I do want to give you a chance if you do have any specific questions for clarity's purposes to help expedite this process.
No, I think this is great. I think if I can meet with Jay and Chris just to go over what they need done, we'll get it done.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so can we have the motion move to return this for redesign with the conditions and comments provided?
Yes.
I think you're.
So Mr. Platt brought up a point of perhaps waiving the redesign fee on something like this. I'd like to just, I guess say that's a great idea if possible, if staff could maybe consider that, to see if that's something possible for this one scenario. So yeah, with that, I'll move to return with redesign with the conditions as stated, and with the clarifications as stated by Mr. Platt.
I second motion.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. Roll call, please.
We have a motion and the second to return for redesign with staff's conditions with the clarifications that Jay Platt provided. Roll call. Mr. Board Member Minas?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
And Chairperson Welch?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your patience on a long night here. Can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Actually,
Oh, do we have
staff
something?
has a few announcements, first of all.
Okay.
We would like to thank Chris Agardi. She was with us a number of years as one of our urban designers on staff, and she is retiring as of the end of this year. So we would like to publicly thank her for her service both to the department and to the design review board. So thank you very much, Chris Agardi, and we wish you all the very best in retirement, a well-deserved break. And last but not least, happy holidays to each and every one of you on the board, in the public. We are grateful for all the public participation that we've had throughout this year. We thank the board members for their service and dedication to the DRB. And we wish everyone a very happy 2022. This is our last meeting of 2021. So with that.
Thank you very much. And happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourned.
All right, we are
All
adjourned.
in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you very much. Good night.